Great. And I think we should be recording. With that, welcome everybody to the January 16th edition of Contributor Experience. My name is Elsie Phillips, and I will be leading the call this morning. I just want to remind all of you that we do have a code of conduct and to please be excellent to each other. First things first, do we have any of our regular updates to do? Office hours, meet our contributors, or the community meeting? Is George on the call?
No, he's at the Heptio VMware offsite.
Okay.
Office hours went fine this morning. Josh, are you still on for joining this afternoon?
Yes.
Okay, cool. We should be good.
Okay. Meet our contributors, usual plug. We can always use more people doing that. Paris has envisioned that we would all take at least one session over the course of the year. I'm going to take that challenge up sometime this year. I invite all of you to as well. So if you are interested in doing that, please reach out to Paris and let her know your availability for that. And then the community meeting. Let's see how we're doing for hosts for that. It looks like we have host for tomorrow, but then we don't have any for the next two meetings. So is there anybody on this call that would be interested in hosting the next two meetings? One of the next two meetings, community meetings?
Let me look at my schedule and probably do another one.
It has been suggested to me that I not do any more contributor tips for a little while so that it actually becomes a thing that is owned by Contributor Experience instead of just me.
Okay. This would be for host of the meeting, not doing contributor tips.
Sorry.
No worries.
But that does bring up that if anybody else has an idea for a contributor tip, it would be wonderful to get you on the schedule. Otherwise, we can just call it Aaron's message of the week.
Well, so the last thing I was just, sorry, we're jumping ahead, but the last thing I was going to do on that was to try and create a Google Doc of suggested contributor tips and give ownership of that doc to SIG Contribex and then walk away.
Okay, Josh, I'll let you check your calendar, and if you have an availability, pick the 24th or the 31st, and I would extend that invitation to y'all as well. If you could check your calendars, see if that works for you, and if so, if you could sign up in the spreadsheet, that'd be wonderful. Okay, moving on to our next agenda item. We're going to go over the project board. How are we feeling? Do we want to go over in progress or blocked today? Gwen, which one should we do? Should we do in progress, blocked?
And let me pull up the board. Sorry.
No worries. I just picked somebody at random. If you're busy, I can ask somebody else. Just trying to get somebody else to talk. Break up the LC show this morning.
Hang on. Sorry. Let me find the. I was waiting for the board to come up on the screen share, but I
can also do that.
All right. Let's see. Let's do. So the question was blocked or in progress?
Yeah.
I think we want to do blocked.
Okay. Let's do blocked. Okay.
Sorry, Aaron.
One-on-one hour mentoring process improvements. Paris is not on the call this morning. Is there anybody else that could speak to this?
I think that one is still blocked just to bandwidth.
Okay. How about subproject details in SIG YAML?
Subproject details. I am somewhat of a bottleneck on this. The reason I'm a bottleneck on this is because I keep insisting I don't want to add more fields to define subprojects. We had subprojects defined by owners files, and I would rather see us use those more consistently. But there is an ask to add like more human-friendly information, like who are the people in the owners files? And I feel like rather than adding additional fields to SIG YAML, I'd love to see our automation consume the owners files that are out there and pull that information back so that it's dry. And it's also the owners file information is in places that are controlled by those subproject owners. So we can sort of get away from any change to SIG YAML ends up hitting the root owners file and K community and kind of bottlenecks. This is about sort of self-empowerment. Further, I kind of feel like a lot of the concerns over subprojects is that people don't realize they can have their own meetings, and they can. If there are concerns on more than that, I'm kind of a little bottlenecky about this because I'm really busy with release stuff. I'm happy to shepherd it forward, but I think the other person who had pushed hardest on this particular issue was Steve McGustis, who's also kind of going to be out of pocket for the next half of the month.
Okay.
So at some point, I would love to like turn this into a thing that somebody else could take on. The sludge is in actually convincing the steering committee and doing it properly.
Okay, so this one probably is going to be unblocked for a little bit.
Going to be unblocked for a little while.
Okay.
So the next one I'll just roll on is the update SIG YAML with more working group info. It looks like our community has stepped up and been awesome. ZJS went through and tried to take a best guess at the relevant SIGs. Nikita has put together a PR to update the generator to put stakeholder SIGs in working group information. It needs a rebase, and I will throw it through the steering committee just to give them a glance at it. But at my first glance in the past 30 seconds, it looks okay to me. So I'll pay more attention to that today since the steering committee meeting is happening today.
Excellent.
Does
So
it
this
mean
is potentially not blocked anymore?
That means you can move this to in progress.
Excellent. Love moving stuff. I'd love to call. It's this one, right?
Yes, that's the one.
Cool. Maybe this isn't a drag and drop. Isn't it a drag and drop?
It is a drag and drop. I'm wondering if you may not have permissions on the board.
That would be delightful. Okay. I'll make a note to ask Paris if I have permissions to move the cards around. I know that I have permissions to
You're
make.
not logged in, I have to mention.
I'm not what?
You're not logged into GitHub or whoever is sharing it. Like you're sharing your screen, I can notice that there's a sign in link active in right
Yes.
top corner.
That's probably why.
That's
Okay.
it.
I will move that later then.
I think I have rights to move it. So since
Okay.
we're all here doing this in a publicly recorded manner. Boop.
Beautiful. Yeah, if you could move it, that'd be wonderful.
Updated on my screen, I guess not yours yet. It's all good. We can move to the next column.
Cool. Do you want to move into in progress or down into the doc? Let's do something else. Let's move into the open mic discussion. So who has this first item?
السلام ورحمة الله.
I see Jose's on the call, but his phone is muted.
Okay. We can jump into my agenda items, and then he can
Can everybody please mute themselves?
Yeah, Ibrahim, can you mute, please?
Hey, sorry, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Hey, sorry, this is Jose. I might have one of the open mic items. I can't see the screen for some reason anymore.
Oh, here we go.
Hi, the one that was up, sorry.
There you go. Now you can share your screen.
Yes,
Yeah, I'm just having some issue with Zoom.
you're up for a contributor mentorship for Intel.
Yeah, so let me see if I can navigate back. Here, can you skip me for a second just so I can figure out how to get my controls back? Sorry, something happened on my computer.
Sure. Big news. Our charter was merged. So yay! Thank you to everybody who helped with that. This has been like a several month endeavor. It also, so if you haven't read the charter yet, I would highly encourage you to do so. Especially the section where we communicate how we communicate changes to the rest of the community. We've struggled with that in the past. We have programs that they're not aware of. We make policy changes that they're not aware of. It's kind of ironic that we maybe aren't super great at communicating with the rest of the community right now. So if we can all make that one of our goals for 2019 to do a better job communicating with other SIGs, that would be wonderful. Moving to the next agenda item, KubeCon EU, which is in May in Barcelona. So I'm going to open this up for discussion. Do we just want to do an intro? Do we want to do an intro, deep dive and an intro? Do we want to have a merged session? What makes sense based on who is planning to go and what content people want to prepare for?
I'd like to also mention that Shanghai is happening in a month after Barcelona, so probably it's worth discussing Shanghai.
I think Shanghai is easier. I think for Shanghai, we should probably just have an intro.
Okay.
Well, if we're only doing an intro for Shanghai, then frankly, that could be reusable content if we do either just the intro or both instead of a merged session in Barcelona.
I am a big fan of just doing an intro at both. I feel like if we do a merge session, 80 minutes is a long time to ask people to block out on like a regular session day. I think that we're going to have so the return for our effort is going to be low.
Wait, hold on.
Hi, Ibrahim, could you please mute your mic if you're not speaking to the group? Yeah, okay. Does that sound okay to people? Do people have objections to that?
Well, I found what I like the most as a deep dive is that the SIG takes some specific project or feature. Boy, is there some way I can block somebody from reconnecting?
You can.
Oh, he's muted now. Okay. There we go. Some sort of project or particular feature or something else that they're working on and focus the deep dive entirely on that.
It's turning into like a working session.
Right. Turning into a working session or, you know, hey, we're working on this CAP and everybody should know about it or something like that. Like, I mean, I think in Seattle, the SIG Network deep dive was all about dual stack, you know, and all of the problems there and everything else. We did the one for SIG release on build tools. So I think whether or not we have a deep dive should depend on whether or not somebody has something that they would like to do for one of the contributor experience sub-projects for a deep dive. I could see it being a working session on the developer guide or the contributor guide, for example.
We were mulling around that idea. I don't know if we talked about it in Slack, but I know it came up, I think, at KubeCon itself.
How much work is that going to be to coordinate that?
A bit. I mean, somebody's going to have to do some prep if we actually expect to meaningfully get people started. I mean, since these sessions are only effectively, whatever it is, 35, 40 minutes of working time, really what you get out of it is you would get some additional people from the community to take specific items. They wouldn't actually do them. They would just and to sort of understand the structure of the new guides. So somebody would need to do a fair amount of preparation for that to be meaningful.
Who is planning on going, and are the people who are going, do you have the bandwidth to prepare for that on top of whatever else you're doing at KubeCon?
I'm going to Barcelona and Shanghai. I'm not sure about my full bandwidth to facilitate that, but I'm happy to help.
Okay.
And it's just as a quick reminder when everybody is considering. So just as a quick reminder that the deadline to register for intro and deep dive session is February 8th. So we have a few weeks before the deadline to polish all the details and to figure out what is our plan for deep dive and intro for Barcelona. For Shanghai, the deadline is later.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do we want to give people, sorry, Aaron, go ahead.
Yeah, so hi, I was part of the group that broke ground on this 80-minute working session thing for the conformance working group. So just to share our experience, what happened was we decided we kind of needed a face-to-face version of one of these meetings. We felt that it was important because everybody was going to be in the same place at the same time. I think that sort of thing could be really cool for Europe or Shanghai, the time zones that don't traditionally get to participate in these Pacific friendly meetings. And we just kind of did the usual thing. So we had some notes, we had some meeting notes, we kind of had an agenda, and we had a note taker and just kind of passed mics around. So we did actually walk away with some action items, some difficult questions got answered. We didn't come intending to have everybody hack away at their laptops, but instead just have a high bandwidth communication. So it's just another potential suggestion that might be lower effort on the organization front.
Yeah, I like the sound of that too. That sounds better from I feel like everybody who goes to KubeCon generally is stretched a little thin bandwidth wise. Do we want to give people a week to discuss this on the mailing list, their preferences, their proposals, and then we regroup? I think next week is the off-hour meeting, the later meeting. So do we want to discuss this the week after that? Give people 2 weeks? Is that still going to be within the proposal timeline? Yeah, so that'd be the 30th. And so people would have over a week after we come to a decision to put in our,
I think
our proposals. So that sounds good. Okay, so people have 2 weeks to send in their proposals to the mailing list where we can discuss what's going to make the most sense. 2 weeks we'll reconvene and make a final decision. Speaking of face-to-face meetings, as a SIG, we're supposed to, we've talked about having one in the next 2 quarters. I know last year we did it at IndexConf, and so, but I don't know if we would want to do that again. Do people feel like that worked well last time? Do we want to do the in-person meeting in a different format? Gonna toss that out there for discussion. Josh, I know that you attended the last.
Yeah, I feel like we can't judge
how that
from
was
the one last time because the one last time was done in like a week's notice, and that really cut down on attendance for it, and also cut down on the amount of preparation we did. So I mean, I don't feel like it was tremendously productive, but I feel like those 2 problems were the reasons why it was not tremendously productive. given that anything that had a little bit more lead time, I think would be better, because we did get some things done. So anything that had a little bit more lead time, I think would work better. I do kind of feel like, if possible, it would be nice to harness it to another Kubernetes event, maybe not a KubeCon because it's already so long, but maybe one of the upcoming Kube days, so that we're not limiting attendees to people who can schedule additional travel.
Okay, I'm down for grouping things.
Or
Is
even one of the
Bay
bigger
Area-
conferences. Or even one of the bigger conferences like OSCON, maybe. I've never even heard of IndexCon. I'm not sure what that is.
OSCON happens in July, so it can be a bit late.
Yeah. If we wanted to hook it up to OSCON, I would arrange the logistics, et cetera, since I'm here in Portland. And it wouldn't be hard to do or expensive. But I bet a lot of people in our group were not planning on going to OSCON. So,
how about Google Next? That will happen in April in San Francisco.
That sounds reasonable to me. I like that it's before Barcelona and Shanghai.
Yeah, it is. It is. It's the first decade of April. I know there are enough folks outside of the Bay Area, so it's primarily the question for us and myself. Is it fine to travel to Bay Area for this event?
Okay, so what dates were those again?
April 10th, as far as I remember. Let me find it.
Okay.
Let me find it. April 9, 11.
Okay. April 9th to the 11th?
Yeah, it's Google Next itself.
Okay.
So
any of those days, or immediately before or after?
It depends if there are any people in this group attending this event at all. So does it make sense for them to attend this event? It is. Why I propose this event? Because as far as I remember, it's the only big somehow Kubernetes related event in North America in Q1, Q2 before Barcelona. At least it came to my mind.
Yeah, there's the Kube Day that Paris is organizing, but that's quite soon. We would have to decide now in order to give people any notification, because that's February 23rd.
I'm liking the April timeframe a little bit better. That way people have time to talk to their managers to get approvals, and a couple of months to book tickets and hotels and stuff. So I'd probably have a preference for March or April, but if you all want to meet sooner, that's cool. I'll make it work.
Isn't Scale in March?
Ooh, yeah, Scale. Let's see where Scale is. When Scale is.
End of March, as far as I remember. Well, speaking about Cloud Next, just to finish here, just opened my calendar and noticed that it happened since Tuesday till Thursday. So if people are planning for another day, to travel for another day, there might be a Monday option or Friday option. Probably we have to discuss that with Paris, because last year, for example, at Google Next, there was a community day before the big Next, which was less Google focused but more open-source focused, and Kubernetes was one of the target points. So if this will happen this time again, probably most of us are likely to attend this community day as well.
Okay, I'm liking the sound of that option.
But anyway, that's just one proposal of multiple. Maybe Scale is a different one, but I can expect that we have more active SIG contributor experience participants from Bay Area than from Los Angeles area.
Yeah, although a bunch of us are going to be at Scale anyway.
Okay.
So Scale certainly makes a credible fallback. I could arrange the logistics of hosting, etc., at Scale. Probably we would want to do it on either Wednesday or Thursday before the conference. Otherwise, we'd be doing it on Monday and staying through the weekend.
Okay, so I don't think that we're probably going to decide this today. So why don't we also take this to the mailing list? Ihor, if you could send out a note about Google Next, and then Josh, it sounds like you're a proponent of Scale. And so why don't we toss those two up and see if either of those work for people, and if one of those becomes the clear winner, then we'll like solidify that. We'll
can it be
time
easier if you, Elsie, or someone else just prepare the brief email and send it as a single mail to entire mailing list with these options, or like any other alternatives?
Yeah, totally. I can do that.
It could be easier, like from my perspective.
All right. Yeah, I can do that. Okay. Those were, I think, my two agenda items. Oh, actually, I have one more. The DevStats sub-project group has been meeting once a month on Tuesdays. However, attendance has dwindled for that group. So I'm wondering if we should just talk about DevStats more in this general meeting, rather than having that separate project group meeting once a month. +1? Are we okay with that? Okay, cool. Now we will move on. Let's go back to the person that we skipped earlier. Jose?
Hey, sorry about that.
No worries.
Hey, so I work at Intel, and we've been working in the community here for the last year or so. And part of what we did for our internal team was make sort of like an internal mentorship program to kind of help guide some of our junior engineers through the community and get them familiarized with all of the documents and things like that. So we're sort of leveraging a lot of the pieces that this group has contributed to already. And I guess I just wanted to come and kind of share maybe the outline of the program we had put together. What we were talking with our internal education team about doing is prepping all of these materials kind of onto more professional slideware and video content, and then seeing if this group would be interested in taking it as a part of the Kubernetes ecosystem, as kind of a generic mentorship program. We noticed that the mentorship program that exists today is a little bit sparse on content, and so maybe we could give some of this materials back to that effort. So I don't know the easiest way to share kind of what we've done. I can kind of show you the course outline we put together if that's of interest, but that's what we wanted to talk about today or bring in was like, is there an interest in taking some of this collateral if we make it more generic and adding it to the mentorship program?
My suggestion is that you come back when Paris is here, because Paris is the mentoring sub-project lead. And then I would love for you to demo some of this content that you've made so we can see it. Would that be possible?
Yeah, we could walk through kind of the outline and then the course materials, the reading materials, and the presentation we did for maybe one of the modules to give a walkthrough. So I can put more time on for next week to go in depth on it. But it sounds like maybe first pass is, yeah, if you have a bunch of material, this group may be interested in looking at it a bit more.
Yeah, I think that we would definitely be interested in looking at it more.
Do you happen to have a link to just like something available by chance?
So all of our stuff right now is internal. Part of the course curriculum was a lot of coverage on submissions that we had made or caps that we had submitted and sort of, helping explain, hey, this went wrong with our cap, or this went right with the cap, or, there was already prior art. So there's a fair amount of like internal back and forth that I think we need to pull out of some of the materials. So let me find one of the modules that's at least sort of already sanitized from that perspective that I can share. We're willing to go through and clear out all of that from the materials, but just because this is kind of a broad public meeting, I'd rather, I'd just rather keep it off the wide distribution if possible until we have a chance to go through it once. But if someone's interested in maybe going through one-on-one just to take a look at like what the layout is, or maybe even help guide like which one we bring in here to sort of demo, I could have somebody look at it. I just, it's kind of got to be like a friendly situation just because I don't want to leak anything.
Totally good. So the person that I think you should reach out to is Paris Pittman.
Yeah, I talked to Paris, so cool. We'll come back in next week with it.
Sounds good. I think next week is actually the European hours. So if you want to jump on, I think the meeting's at 7 o'clock at night Pacific. You're welcome to. But if not, then we can also pencil you in for the next meeting on the 30th, I believe.
I think those might be Asian hours. As someone in Europe, that would be really a weird time for me.
Yes. Sorry. Yes, you're right. Asian hours.
So probably move to the 30th then?
Yeah. Does that sound okay?
Yeah, that sounds good.
Okay.
Who's else? Oh, maybe I lost internet.
Sorry, can you guys hear me?
Yes, can hear you now.
Great. Sorry, it's hotel Wi-Fi, so it's kind of
awesome.
spotty. Aaron, I think you're next on the agenda.
Yeah, so apologies for the total lack of prep on this. Yesterday was me versus 8 meetings, and so I'm still kind of recovering from that. While that was going on, I saw there was a lot of discussion in SIG testing, and I just wanted to bring it here because I feel like it's related to SIG contributor experience and how they, the meetings did win. And so it's related to contributor experience and our change deployment policy. Since the charters merged, I can now link to it. Yay! So I'm going to share my screen with stuff I put in the meeting notes, but my ask here is because I have more of those meetings coming up, that's the wrong screen again. So cool, you get to see my private chat with my release leads where I said we should stop having private chats. Look at that. Let's try again, and let's try this screen where I have the meeting notes pulled up. And so I just wanted to link first the 2 policies of the relevant groups. SIG testing.
Aaron, sorry for interrupting, but it's really low resolution. It's really high resolution.
Small. How about that?
Much better. Thank you so much.
Okay. So SIG testing has kind of a less wordy deployment policy where we try and categorize our changes into low, medium, or high risk changes based on the potential to break contributor workflows, how easy they are to roll back, and how many SIGs or repos they affect. It's kind of squishy and fuzzy. It doesn't have hard numbers. Part of that's to like help us figure this out when it's reasonable. And so the change that I'm talking about here is a change that was communicated on December 10th along with the PR that actually I'm still sort of trying to root cause the PR. The change was something I would classify as a medium risk change because it did impact existing contributor workflows. I think it was easy to roll back and it impacted all of the project repos. It wasn't intended to. This was an accident. So the policy we should have taken was we should have shared the change with contributor experience, and it may have required a lazy consensus issue with Kubernetes dev. And so we piloted this change on K community, and we did talk about this within the SIG contributor experience mailing list first. And then we also gave a broader heads up to the Kubernetes dev mailing list that we were going to deploy this change to K community. Now, somehow between that notice going out on December, well here, let's So this is what contributor experiences thing is. The reason SIG testing talks about sharing changes with SIG contributor experience is because y'all's change deployment policy includes a lot more communication channels. I appreciate that. That's cool. You hit a bunch of different mailing lists. You reserve the right to brag about this on like the Twitters and the community meetings and the Slacks and the blogs and stuff. And that's cool. Testing rolls out many changes every day. And so we don't necessarily feel that we can afford the time to communicate on all of those channels for all of those changes, because that would really reduce the signal to noise ratio for a bunch of folks. So we sort of trust you to give us feedback on whether or not the change we're talking about makes sense from a contributor experience perspective, and if you so feel the need to broadcast across all these mediums. Y'all don't have a medium risk change. You do have a high risk change where it impacts more than 4 SIGs or working groups. So we would have stepped through the process of notifying all the SIGs. Okay, so what was the change in question? Well, let's go take a look at the notification that was sent out. It was this, also really small text, I'm sure, so let me blow it up. It's Christoph telling folks that wall of text, but it boils down to implicit self-approve gets turned off. So if you are the author of your PR, you are implicitly approving your PR. So to remind folks, /approve is the thing that's based off of the files that your PR touches. If you are in an owner's file that is adjacent to or above the files that you are touching in the code tree, you have approver rights if you're in the approver's field versus the reviewer's field. I got kind of cranky about the fact that I'm in the root owner's file of K community, so I could submit a PR and it would get implicitly approved because I'm me and I have the approve rights, and the bot would just add approve. And then anybody could swoop in and drop an LGTM. By anybody, I mean any Kubernetes org member. And so I campaigned really hard to have the opposite, that just because I'm in the owner's file in root and I have sufficient privileges to approve all of those changes, the approve label shouldn't automatically get implied. The setting was known as implicit self-approve false. So we rolled this out at community, and we discovered that a lot of the contributors within the community got confused by this. A lot of people just, in practice, it's confusing for PR authors. They don't understand why their PR isn't approved, or they don't even know that they can approve it themselves. So what we instead decided to do was roll it back to the default behavior where, yes, if I submit my own PR, I do implicitly approve of my own PR. And yes, theoretically, anybody could drive by and LGTM that PR, but it also reduces the friction for me. There are a lot of contributors who just kind of know what they're doing and want that extra little bit out of the way. So we proposed that we were going to roll this change out to community, and then we were going to roll it out to everything. I don't know what happened. That change accidentally got rolled out to everything without any further notice. So I'm trying to dig up whatever timeline I can to explain. So when did that change actually get rolled out? And I feel like there's some crucial steps.
Can I jump in, Aaron?
Sure, please do.
Okay, so after my, so I put out the lazy consensus to change it for community. That was achieved. I made the specific change into test infra. After that change went in, one of the test infra folks was like, hey, I want to go and set us up that these things that we discussed are going to be in the future our new defaults, and be opinionated on, like, there's kind of two sides whenever we're talking about test infra changes. There's the settings that Kubernetes and the Kubernetes community uses, as well as there's the settings in prow of the software product that we have developed internally to do all this tooling. And sometimes we offer options that other folks might want to use in prow, but we do not necessarily turn on. And in many cases, the defaults that Kubernetes, like the settings that Kubernetes use, are not the default for somebody deploying a new instance of Prow. So the change was supposed to change the defaults for Prow to kind of match what the future of what we wanted for Kubernetes, the thing that we're driving towards in Kubernetes as the default. What was unintentional about the change was it having an impact in Kubernetes right away. And there was a couple different points of confusion there. It was because we're kind of inverting settings, like inverting the meaning of the different flags, so that the default is always, in the way that Go designs it, is if you omit it, it can be no, you can say it's either nil or false. Whole bunch of stuff on the back end, but there was some confusion basically from the specific settings that we were inverting. And it was not clear to me as one of the PR reviewers that it would take effect right away when it was merged and deployed. And that this would be enabled across everything, that if you don't, that these would be the new defaults if we hadn't set something more explicit. That change was merged 6 days ago and was deployed as is the usual over at SIG testing on a Friday afternoon. So it was merged and then went live and nobody noticed it over the weekend. And then this week started and we got a complaint from the docs folks that, hey, there's this behavior change. We don't know what happened. This wasn't communicated, etc. We learned of that yesterday.
Yeah. So to complete the timeline, that so that sounds like 6 days ago would have been January 9th, I think. And so January 15th, we had somebody approach us in SIG testing saying, hey, this doesn't look right. There was much discussion. It started out kind of the form of, why wasn't I informed? There was concern that people were forcibly changing workflows without giving any heads up or warning. So part of me wants to sort of go back and examine the timeline to see if we followed our documented process, and if we didn't, are there things we could do to make sure that we follow it in the future? You know, is this an honest part of me feels like there's a careful balance between being super conservative with every rollout and being able to deploy quickly and be very agile and responsive to the needs of the contributors to our 150 plus repos. And so it's okay for mistakes to happen. They're probably not malicious. How can we have an open forum for transparent discussion on things like this? So for me, part of transparency is doing a retro on things like this when things go wrong, trying to put together a timeline. I don't know that I'm going to be the individual who can put together this timeline. So my suggestion would be maybe Christoph or somebody who's sufficiently motivated could take what I've put in the meeting notes here into an issue so we can get the timeline down and see what went wrong. One of the things this revealed to me is that if I look at both of those change policies, neither of them have any explicitly documented criteria for what constitutes motivation for a rollback. You know, like when should the fire alarm get pulled? Is that based on impact? Is that based on duration? When we do get that notice, how quickly should we be responding to that sort of thing? So on and so forth. So I just wanted to have a little bit of a discussion about that here in case anybody has any immediate opinions. Otherwise, just to give a heads up that we're sorry about this. We'll make sure that notifications get sent out across the appropriate channels and see how we can do better. Stop sharing.
The one thing that I can clarify is the reason that it wasn't communicated, I can say this explicitly, the reason it wasn't communicated is because it was unintentional. It was unintentional to take effect right away and there was no intent to impact our workflows in Kubernetes right now. It just had to do with like layering of defaults and things that we weren't expecting in the code. I definitely take part of the responsibility as someone who did a code review on that PR and did not catch that this was going to happen. But yeah, that's the reason it wasn't communicated, is it was unintentional to take effect right away and to have impact on our settings.
I also want to give a heads up on one other thing that I am trying to move us toward, but I don't know, and this underscores the need for that. I don't know how quickly we can get there. When I think of PROW, I'm now thinking of two different concepts. I'm thinking of PROW, the sub-project, aka the code base that we contribute to. And then I'm thinking of our PROW deployment for the Kubernetes project, aka prow.kates.io, and all of the configuration files that pointed at our repos and configure it to run the plugins we like to give us the workflow that we want. There are actually many other PROW deployments out there. So for example, Istio uses their own PROW deployment. OpenShift uses their own PROW deployment. JetStack uses their own PROW deployment. And so like this change in defaults can definitely talk about how should the PROW sub-project communicate changes in its defaults and so on and so forth to the people who are downstream consumers of PROW and deploy their own instances. So I'm looking to actually mature this project. There's been a lot of interest in it. I'm hoping to break it out into its own repository so we can start to separate the PROW code base from the Kubernetes PROW configuration. Because I think those are kind of two tangential issues. So look for more on that if you're interested in that. I could always use help. Part of the difficulty in just making that clean break is the dependencies are a little tangled because PROW has lived in the test info repo so long alongside a bunch of our other automation. There are things that depend on code inside of the PROW repo and things in the PROW repo that depend outside of. And so a little bit of that untangling has to happen before we can get there. So there is a PROW channel that is dedicated to the PROW sub-project and the people who are there. I'd like to just start to grow that into more of its own separate thing. And then maybe we can live in a world where contributor experience becomes the owners of the PROW configuration for the Kubernetes project. Instead of today, we are in this weird mix where like SIG testing kind of owns it, SIG contributor experience kind of owns it. We're both super mindful of all of the automation we could do to test things and make contributors' lives greater. So ramble over.
Okay, so you're looking for help with that, right? So should people reach out via Slack or email? What's your preferred way to get a hold of you?
Slack would be a great place. And if you want to talk about how to decouple PROW from the test info repo, let's start that discussion in the PROW channel so we can understand what it would take to make that happen.
Okay, groovy. All right. I think we're at the end of our written agenda. Does anybody else have anything they want to talk about in our last 8 minutes? Okay. I will give you.
I have
Sorry.
something to ask. This week I was cleaning the devel folder, and I thought that. Can you hear me, guys?
Mm-hmm.
You're good.
Okay. Yeah, I'm gonna share a screen. While cleaning the devel folder, I created this table. Let me show you grouping files. I was grouping by 6 every file we have in the devel folder. And I want to ask Bob if it is useful to add a line like this one for files that are not part of a SIG folder, because that can facilitate this way we can reach out the owners of those files when we have to update them or just to discuss anything about information in those files. Maybe somewhere in the style guide.
Yep, that's definitely something that can be added into the metadata for the document.
The other thing that's helpful for us to do and that we've done, I would need to pull up the community repo and try and remember if we've done that for Devel, is sorting things into folders. Because the other thing that we can do if we move documents into folders, yeah, we haven't done that with Devel. We have done it with design proposals. So if you have a look at the design, like the contributors design proposals directory, where the legacy design proposals there have been sorted into folders. The thing that's nice about us sorting them into folders is then we can have owners files where we can label things with the appropriate SIG, as well as delegate approvals to that SIG, as opposed to if they're all in one big Devel folder, then it basically has to come to people like me to go and approve for the really big folder, as opposed to being able to just delegate this out to the SIG and say, like, you update your own document, you own it.
Okay.
Yeah, so I would look at design proposals as a suggestion. If you have any questions, feel free to ping me on the issue or in Slack.
Okay, thank you. I will.
Okay. Does anybody have anything else? 5 minutes? Okay. Well, I will give you back that extra time in your days then. Thank you for joining the call today, and we'll see you either next week or the week after.
Thanks, Elsie.
Thank you.